Joining us now to talk about whether Playboy really can be empowering is former glamour model Melinda Messenger, who turned down Playboy.
And also with us is model and columnist Aisleyne Horgan-Wallace, who posed topless for Playboy in 2009, says that posing naked can inspire other women. It's interesting, Melinda, because we know that your previous career was as a glamour model, so you didn't have an issue posing with some clothes off, but you turned down Playboy. What is it about Playboy particularly, then, that you have a problem with?
Well, so, yes, we're going back kind of 22 years, and in my 20s, I did some glamour modelling for The Sun, and I got asked to do Playboy. Actually, it just made me feel really sick, the thought of it. I just didn't want to put myself in that environment. I didn't want to be photographed nude. I'd already reached the limit of what was kind of OK for me, or I thought was OK for me at the time, and it just didn't fit. It just didn't sit right. It is, of course, you know, there's no getting away from it. It's a sex magazine, it's aimed at men, and, of course, it sexually objectifies women. That's its core business, that's what it's all about. And
it's consensual, though, that's what I think. It's consensual objectification. I love being naked and I love people looking at me naked, if I'm honest. I was born naked, and I just think I think the woman's form is absolutely beautiful without clothes on. I mean, I'd have one on my coffee table, for sure, especially if I was in it.
I totally get the point of it being consensual and you wanting to, and you feeling good about it, and that's fantastic, you know, and that's absolutely your right and anyone's right to do that. However, I think it's about the sort of wider, broader message and responsibility, and it's...
But there's so much good that they're doing in this issue. There's so many issues that they're bringing to the forefront that people might not have known about before. They've even got the woman who started the MeToo campaign on there, you know, an in-depth interview with her, which is a really good thing.
Personally, I mean, I just laughed when I heard that this is what they were trying to do, because I thought, it's all words, it's all PR spin, isn't it? I mean, it's fine for it to be what it is. It's fine for it to be sex magazine aimed at men. That's totally fine, but don't try and pretend that suddenly it's about empowering women. I think about my daughter, I think growing up, I think about my sons growing up, I think about, you know, the hundreds of thousands of women that don't sort of have a public voice and don't want to be seen, you know, as sort of as sexualised objects or kind of fantasy.
Just because you're naked doesn't mean that you haven't got an opinion on you know, world matters, or your opinion doesn't matter.
No,
you're more
I
than
agree.
just... So you can be both, is what I'm trying to say.
I mean, it's interesting, as much as you say that you don't see Chris Packham doing something like this because we've got this marine biologist being pictured naked, one of the things that undoubtedly it does bring the picture and the story to a bigger audience and maybe a different audience that wouldn't necessarily be engaging with it. And if she's comfortable with that and the picture's something that she's pleased with, then surely a platform, you'd imagine from her, where she can talk about what it is that concerns her about marine conservation on a bigger platform is something that's to be lauded.
I see what you're saying, but wouldn't it be far more empowering and far more powerful if she was allowed to have that message, share that message, and be fully clothed?
Yeah,
but why
does she have to
because
be
it's beautiful.
Completely naked?
Because it's beautiful, and there's a market for it. So let them live.
The point you made,
it's taking away from what she has to say and from the cause that she's representing. You know, if
no, because then we'd be judging her on
it's...
what she was wearing. Like, where did she get her suit from? Where did she get her dress from?
I mean, it's a point you made, Melinda, about having a daughter, and as a father of a daughter, I think it does change your perspective as a man. And my daughter's 21, and I start to think, well, actually, I want my daughter to get work because of her brain and because of how good she is. And I wouldn't expect her to be having to take her clothes off to get those opportunities.
But then...
And I wouldn't want that.
No. Would any of you guys want to? Would any of you guys strip completely naked and nude to highlight a cause?
If I felt like it was important enough and I felt comfortable enough with my body, then undoubtedly. If I was comfortable in that sort of situation and I was proud of the fact that I could do it, then yeah, too right. But I don't have an issue with getting naked.
But don't you also think it's about the context and setting? So, yes, for a good cause, if the cause is the main message that's being carried through, but if the main message is the naked body and how they're attractive, then that takes away from what they're trying to say. That takes away from what they're trying to communicate.
So do you think that any sort of nude shoot of any sort, even if it's done discreetly, even if it's about, in theory, empowering bodies...
Context.
Yeah, but do you think that anything, the fact that they're naked, detracts from what it is that they're talking about, because you can't get
I
past
think
the
because
idea
it's
that they
in
know what they're doing.
Playboy magazine, you know, it's still called Playboy. I think this, for me, it's a bit like a toxic relationship where the partner says to you, I've changed, you know, things are going to be different. I do really respect you, I do. Yet they carry on and behave in exactly the same way. For me, it's exactly, it's totally incongruous.
No, I think it's much more arty now. If you look at the images, it's much
But it's
more
the name, is it the
beautiful.
name?
Like
It's still
pieces of
Playboy.
art.
It's still
Undoubtedly, though, Aisleyne, they
entertainment, it's
tried
not
taking
inclusive.
away the nudes, and clearly they've worked
Yeah.
out that maybe that hasn't been as powerful,
Yeah.
and that they've gone back on it. Admittedly, there's
But
no one
what's
in the
wrong
family
with
there.
that? What's wrong
No,
with the naked
but that's-
body is my
Nothing's
point.
wrong with
Nothing.
it. Nothing's
But
wrong
Melinda's
with it.
point,
It's
there
what
is
it
clearly
is.
a business proposition here as well, and they're thinking, actually, we get much more traction. We're talking about it again. We're talking about the fact
But
that
the
it's being
women want
revoted.
to be.
But
The
it's a
women want to be
manipulation.
glorified and looked at. You know, it's
And that's OK for them
consensual.
to do that. Yeah, and that's totally OK for them to do that. But don't pretend it's something it's not.
But isn't it the pose? I mean, if you're being provocative and you're being sexual, that's very different to someone, say, posing in front
very
of,
true.
you know, a load of fish to say, let's protect fish in the oceans or something like that. I mean, it's very different, isn't it? I say that because I know in my mind there is someone who posed in front of fish, isn't there?
We were talking about this earlier. Yeah, I could just see your face.
Yeah. But you know, if you're
the images are classy, they're not grotesque.
The image is
they're
beautiful. That
beautiful.
cover is
Yeah,
absolutely
it's absolutely
beautiful.
stunning.
It's
I'd have that on my
stunning.
wall.
But I
Helena
just
Bonham
feel
Carter
it's
posed in front of fish
I
to
think-
protect fish in the ocean. That was
You know, but
Yeah.
it's the fact. It's all about the set and setting. It's all about context, isn't it? It's in Playboy magazine. They're claiming to be
But it's an
gender
iconic
inclusive,
magazine,
you know,
and millions of
and it's
people
not.
read it.
If
So
it was
it's
inclusive-
highlighting issues.
But
to
millions of people don't
that
read
might
it
not.
anymore. It's failing. You know, it's
Well,
failing.
there must be still
and
a
that's
market
why they're
because
doing
they've-
this.
You know, that's why they've done this.
Well,
deal.
but what will be
To
interesting...
try and regain a
It will be
market.
interesting to see whether there is a market for it, won't there? Because clearly there's been a big
Well, they've
change
got
and they've
one
gone back
reader
to the
over.
news.
Playboy, it just
And whether it does
inherently
gain
feels
traction. I mean, it's still a
out
very
of date.
successful brand. It's still a very financially successful
Exactly.
brand as well, beyond
But
the
the
magazine.
magazine is not.
Yeah,
so
well, that's
much
dropped
anymore.
in terms of circulation and readership has dropped dramatically. It's fascinating to hear your points. Thank you very much for joining us both this morning. Really interesting stuff.